As you can tell, I am quite into reading about organizational psychology, workplace well-being, anything self-help related I'm also quite keen on. And so if you're interested in any of those aspects as well, this video is for you. Today, I will be walking us through some of my favorite organizational psychology books. So if you're a student studying psychology at the moment, or you're in the field of organizational psychology, or anything along those lines, I feel like you'll really enjoy reading some of these books that I have here today. A lot of them are based on research and evidence-based. Some of them are a little bit more sort of practical and applicable to our everyday lives. But yeah, I'm excited to share some of my favorite books in organizational psychology, so let's get into it. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Erica, a workplace wellbeing consultant working in New Zealand, and I have a master's in organizational psychology, and I'm just really interested in all things org psych, workplace wellbeing, or even individual wellbeing, to be honest. And so if you're keen on those areas as well, stay tuned for some of the books that might be of interest for you. Some of these books, as I said, are quite evidence-based and researchy, so some of them are kind of more textbooky. I think I might start with some of the more textbook-like books, just to kind of maybe not get those out of the way, but maybe for some of you, you might not be interested in those textbook type books. But I feel like these three textbooks are highly useful if you are getting into organizational psychology and really want a good understanding of some of the key foundational research, some of the key foundational theories as well. These three books are really, really good. So I might actually start off with the one that I actually read quite a few years ago. And so the book that I'm referencing is called Wellbeing at Work: How to Design and Implement and Evaluate an Effective Strategy. And this book was by Ian Hesketh and Cary Cooper, I believe. This is the book that I'm referencing. It's not too heavy, to be honest. I read this a couple of years ago, and this was actually really interesting in terms of thinking about the systems perspective when it comes to org psych. A lot of the work in organizational psychology does revolve around implementing effective strategies and how you might actually go about doing that in a workplace setting. And so this book honestly talks you through all the key steps of things you need to know. They provide sort of useful models for you to kind of understand what they're talking about, because a lot of it is, yeah, it's quite heavy on the sort of theoretical content as well. I believe they were researchers in this field, but they also look through key concepts like leadership. Some other aspects that were quite interesting were talking about how to promote workplace well-being within a workplace. So this is really good if you're maybe like an HR manager or working internally, or even as a consultant, to be honest. Honestly, I think this book is very, very useful if you are a practitioner in the field in particular, but again, it would be very interesting to read if you're just interested in getting into org psych and what the strategy side of things looks like. Next up, I have two kind of more hefty textbooks when it comes to organizational psychology. I will recommend this one. So this one is the Oxford Handbook of Organizational Wellbeing, which was by Susan Cartwright and Cary Cooper, who I mentioned in this sort of previous book as well. He does quite a bit of work in the field. And as you can see, this is a fat textbook. But I will say this has so much good insights. So basically, how this textbook is generally structured is that it consists of pretty much all of the foundational theories that you need to know when it comes to organizational psychology. And so, as you can see, it's kind of a textbook that dives into some of the key research studies that people have done, and a lot of it is sort of the primary research that's done. So, for example, as you can see, I've kind of sort of annotated some of the pages in here. This was purely for my own interest. This chapter talked about how well-being affects attendance dynamics, so whether you show up at work and what that means and what the consequences are for individuals as well as the workplace. And so this is just a very, very good handbook of all the things that might come up in any organizational psychology course. You will recognize a lot of the researchers' names in this book, if you are doing a thesis or do any sort of research in organizational psychology. So highly recommend this one if you are a student and you're getting into organizational psychology. I have another kind of similar textbook style book as well. This one is just called Organizational Psychology, Readings on Human Behavior in Organizations. And this is by David Kolb, as well as some other researchers. I believe this textbook was written in like the 1990s, if I'm correct. But again, like I said, with organizational psychology, a lot of the key theories sort of remain the same largely in terms of some of the principles that are used in workplaces to understand human behavior, motivation, and performance. If you're a nerd like me and you're into these things, this one might be a good one to check out at your local library perhaps, but I do think the first two that are recommended are a lot more readable, to be honest. Let's keep the show going. I think I might segue into some of the more researchy ones, but again, these aren't textbooks, so these are slightly more readable as opposed to the earlier ones that I showed you. One that I recommend is Flourish by Martin E.P. Seligman. He is sort of the foundational research around the concept of flourishing and what this means. He's done a lot of research around understanding happiness and well-being. If you're interested in actually understanding what well-being really is, how it's conceptualized, and some of the research around that, this is your sort of foundational book that you want to get into. Highly recommend if you're into positive psychology. Another one that was quite popular actually several years ago is this book called The Rest, Why You Get More Done When You Work Less. This was by Alex Soo-Jung King Pang. This is a heavily research-based book, to be honest, but it's written in a way that's really digestible and easy to read. And so I love psychology books that don't make it too dense. So it's like really easy to get through, but essentially this is all about the research behind the importance of rest and how that affects your well-being, mood, performance at work. Highly recommend, especially given the narrative that a lot of people kind of talk about in terms of overwork. You know, we see heaps of people sort of glamorizing the 8-hour work week and things like that. And so this one's really important to help ground ourselves and really look at some of the research that dives into why we ultimately need to take breaks, why we need to rest, and how that's going to have better outcomes for all of us. Okay, and finally, I will do some honorable mentions. Again, if you're into the concept of performance, pressure, or even sports psychology, this is a really great one, Perform Under Pressure by Dr. Sari Evans. I believe this is written by a New Zealand author, so that's always great as well. And he is also a clinical psychologist. I think he's a clinical psychologist. I also have another one called Range, How Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World by David Epstein. This one I thought was very interesting to read, given that I was sort of in a dilemma when going into organizational psychology. I was really wondering whether I should specialize in a specific field or if I should do something more generic, maybe find some grad program and get exposed to different areas of work, and maybe that way I could eventually specialize. But basically what David Epstein does, he essentially talks about how generalist is kind of the way to go. It's up to you if you want to agree with that or not. He essentially argued that a powerful argument for how to succeed in any field is to develop broad interests and skills while everyone around you is rushing to specialize. So definitely have a read if you're kind of torn between specialists versus generalists. He goes over both, talks about some research and some actual case studies as well. But yeah, really, really great read. And last but not least, I have this book. So this book is called Together, Te Oranga o Te Katoa. This is by Dr. Amanda Wallace and Gaynor Parkin and written by some amazing cultural specialists as well. This book is really based on the Maori model of mental health and well-being, which is called the Te Wharatapa Wha model. And this book is really, really nice if you're into more so holistic well-being, so looking after your physical health, mental health, emotional, family, the world, the land. And so it basically goes through some of the key aspects of the Maori mental health model. And again, this book has some really, really practical tips on how to action each of the different areas depending on what area of well-being you want to work on. If you're keen to understand a little bit more, want some tips on working on your physical health and well-being, you might bring yourself to section 2 here. And again, I just love how all the chapters are laid out in a really simple and easy to understand way. Each chapter has a section with research and evidence as well in there. So everything that's recommended in this book is research and evidence-based. And I actually did help to draft up some of the research and review some of this before it got published, which was very, very cool. And so yeah, if we go to chapter 2.1, for example, let's see what it has to say. So this chapter is about overcome the too busy to be healthy problem. I feel like that is classic. Everyone has this issue where they're like, oh my god, I have a million things on. I can't go to the gym. There's no time for me to exercise this week or go on my daily walk. What this chapter goes through is it kind of talks about the problem, what the research is, and some practical tips on how we can actually get started. I highly recommend this book if you're interested in understanding cultural models of well-being, and some of the key concepts in here can also apply to the workplace, so that's awesome as well. All right, well, that was me for this book review, kind of book recommendations for this organizational psychology and well-being area of interest. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for some of my other videos coming up. I am planning to make a video on my journey into organizational psychology and what I currently do for my work, and so stay tuned for that. Yeah, for now, if you have read any of these books, let me know in the comments below. I'd be really keen to hear some of your thoughts, but also if you have any other suggestions on books that you found really interesting, I'm always keen to learn more and read more as well, so let me know in the comments below. But yeah, in the meantime, take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!